Alright, let's sleep. Pull the blankets up to your chin. Fluff your pillow. Turn off your phone and let the darkness settle around you like a soft, warm cloak. Tonight, we're going to travel back in time to a world that no longer exists, a world of endless grasslands, of thundering hooves, of yurts and campfires, of a people who were dismissed as savages but who built the largest empire the world has ever seen. We're going to tell the story of the Mongol Empire, the horse that conquered the world. But before we get to the conquests and the khans, the battles and the bloodshed, we need to understand where it all began, with a boy who was born clutching a blood clot in his fist, a sign, the old women said, that he was destined for greatness. The boy who would be Khan. The year is 1162. The place is the vast, windswept steppes of Mongolia, a land of endless grass, of harsh winters and scorching summers, of nomadic tribes who lived on horseback, moving with the seasons, following their herds of sheep, goats, and horses. The tribes are constantly at war with each other, raiding, stealing, killing, and taking revenge. It is a brutal, unforgiving world, and only the strongest survive. On the banks of the Onan River, in a small camp of felt tents called yurts, a boy is born. He is given the name Temüjin, after a Tatar chief whom his father, Yasugei, has just captured and killed. The name is a trophy, a mark of victory. But it is also a burden. The Tatars will not forget. Temüjin is born into the royal Borjigin clan, but his family is not powerful. His father, Yasugei, is a minor chieftain, respected but not wealthy. His mother, Hoilan, is a strong, fierce woman who has been kidnapped by Yasugei from another tribe, a common practice on the steppes, where women are often taken as prizes of war. Temüjin is just 9 years old when his father is poisoned by the Tatars. Yasugei had been traveling home when he stopped at a Tatar camp for hospitality. The Tatars recognized him, and they offered him food that was laced with poison. Yasugei died days later, and his tribe, seeing no future in following a child, abandoned the family. Temüjin's mother, Hoilan, refused to give up. She gathered her children, Temüjin, his brothers, and his half-brothers, and she led them into the wilderness. They lived on roots, berries, and the occasional animal they could kill. They were hunted, they were hungry, and they were alone. But Temüjin did not break. He learned to survive. He learned to fight. He learned to trust no one. The capture and the escape. When Temüjin was about 15, he was captured by a rival tribe. They put a wooden collar around his neck and paraded him through their camp as a trophy. He was a prisoner, a slave, a symbol of his family's defeat. But Temüjin was patient. He waited. He watched. And one night, when his captors were drunk and careless, he struck. He smashed his wooden collar against a rock, killed his guard with a single blow, and escaped into the darkness. He did not run far. He knew that he could not survive alone. So he sought out the one person he could trust, his father's old friend, Togrul, the Khan of the Kharites, the most powerful tribe in Mongolia. Togrul was grateful for the loyalty of Yasugei's son, and he agreed to protect Temüjin. In return, Temüjin swore an oath of loyalty to Togrul. It was the beginning of a partnership that would change the world. The rise of a leader. Temüjin was a natural leader. He was charismatic, intelligent, and utterly ruthless. He gathered a small band of followers, his brothers, his friends, and a few warriors who had been impressed by his courage. He led them on raids, stealing horses and cattle, building his reputation and his wealth. He also made powerful alliances. He married Borte, a woman from the Angjarat tribe, and he formed an alliance with her family. He cultivated the support of the lesser tribes, offering them protection in exchange for loyalty. And he never forgot a slight. When the Merkits, a rival tribe, raided his camp and kidnapped Borte, Temüjin did not weep. He did not negotiate. He gathered his allies, Togrul and a young warrior named Jamuka, who would later become his greatest rival, and he attacked the Merkits. The raid was a success. Borte was rescued, and the Merkits were crushed. But the victory also sowed the seeds of conflict. Jamuka, who had been Temüjin's blood brother, grew jealous of Temüjin's growing power. The two friends drifted apart, and they eventually became bitter enemies. The battle for Mongolia. The struggle for control of Mongolia was brutal and prolonged. Temüjin fought a series of campaigns against the rival tribes, the Tatars, the Merkits, the Naimans, and the Karites. He was a brilliant military strategist, and he used tactics that were innovative and devastating. He used feigned retreats to lure his enemies into traps. He used psychological warfare to demoralize his opponents. He rewarded loyalty and punished betrayal without mercy. His greatest rival was his former blood brother, Jamuka. Jamuka was also a skilled leader, and he had gathered a coalition of tribes that opposed Temüjin. The two fought a series of battles, each seeking to destroy the other. In 1204, Temüjin finally defeated Jamuka. Jamuka was captured and brought before Temüjin. The two men, who had once sworn brotherhood, now faced each other as enemies. Jamuka asked for a noble death, to be killed without shedding blood. Temüjin granted his request. The unification of Mongolia was complete. The universal ruler. In 1206, Temüjin summoned a great assembly, a kurultai, of all the Mongol tribes. They gathered on the banks of the Onan River, and they proclaimed him the supreme ruler of the Mongols. He was given a new name, Genghis Khan, the universal ruler. Genghis Khan was not just a conqueror, he was a reformer. He reorganized Mongol society, breaking down the old tribal divisions and creating a new social order based on loyalty to him alone. He created a decimal system of military organization, units of 10, 100, 1,000, and 10,000. He established a legal code, the Yasa, that governed every aspect of Mongol life. He promoted meritocracy, rewarding ability rather than birth. He also created a powerful, disciplined army. The Mongol army was the most formidable fighting force in the world. It was mobile, the soldiers could travel up to 60 miles a day on horseback. It was versatile, they could fight as cavalry, as archers, and as siege engineers. It was ruthless, they showed no mercy to those who resisted, but they offered peace to those who surrendered. Genghis Khan's vision was not just to rule Mongolia, it was to conquer the world. The conquest of China. Genghis Khan's first major target was China. The Chinese Empire was divided into three states, the Tanguts of Xixia in the northwest, the Jurchen of the Yuan Dynasty in the north, and the Song Dynasty in the south. Genghis Khan attacked the Tanguts in 1209, forcing them to submit. In 1211, he turned his attention to the Yuan Dynasty. The Jin were powerful, but they were also corrupt and divided. Genghis Khan led his army across the Great Wall of China, a barrier that had been built to keep out nomadic invaders. The Mongols swept through the Jin territories, capturing cities and slaughtering their defenders. In 1215, they captured Beijing, the Jin capital. The conquest of northern China was a turning point. It gave the Mongols access to Chinese technology, Chinese artisans, and Chinese wealth. It also gave them a taste for empire. The conquest of the West. But Genghis Khan was not content with China. He looked west, toward the vast territories of Central Asia and the Middle East. The Khwarezmian Empire, which stretched from Persia to the borders of India, was a wealthy and powerful state. Its ruler, Shah Muhammad, was arrogant and foolish. In 1218, Genghis Khan sent a diplomatic mission to the Khwarezmian Empire, seeking to establish trade relations. The Shah, believing that the Mongols were mere barbarians, ordered the execution of the envoys. It was a catastrophic mistake. Genghis Khan was furious. He gathered his army and prepared for war. In 1219, he led a massive invasion of the Khwarezmian Empire. The campaign was swift and brutal. The Mongols captured the great cities of Bukhara, Samarkand, and Urgench. They slaughtered the defenders, enslaved the survivors, and reduced the cities to rubble. Shah Muhammad fled, pursued by Mongol forces. He died on a remote island in the Caspian Sea, a broken man. His son, Jalal ad-Din, continued the fight, but he was eventually defeated. The conquest of the Khwarezmian Empire opened the way for the Mongols to advance into the Middle East and Europe. The death of Genghis Khan. In 1227, Genghis Khan was in the middle of a campaign against the Tanguts, who had rebelled against Mongol rule. He was old, in his 60s, which was a great age for a warrior, and he was tired. According to some accounts, he fell from his horse during a hunt, and his injuries proved fatal. According to others, he died of illness, or of wounds sustained in battle. On his deathbed, Genghis Khan summoned his sons and his generals. He gave them his final instructions: they were to continue the conquest, to expand the empire, to make the Mongols the greatest power in the world. He also named his third son, Ögödei, as his successor. Genghis Khan died on August 18, 1227. His body was returned to Mongolia, where it was buried in a secret location. The site of his tomb remains a mystery to this day. But his legacy was secure. He had created an empire that stretched from the Pacific Ocean to the Caspian Sea. He had united the Mongol tribes, and he had given them a purpose. The successors. Ögödei was a capable leader, but he was not the warrior that his father had been. He was more interested in administration and diplomacy than in conquest. He expanded the Mongol bureaucracy, established a postal system, and encouraged trade and commerce. But Ögödei was also a heavy drinker, a common vice among the Mongols. In 1241, he died during a drinking bout. His death marked a turning point in Mongol history. The succession was contested. Ögödei's sons and grandsons vied for power, and the empire was divided. The Mongol Empire was no longer a single, unified state, it was a collection of rival khanates. The most important of these were the Golden Horde in Russia, the Ilkhanate in Persia, the Chagatai Khanate in Central Asia, and the Yuan Dynasty in China. Each of these khanates was ruled by a descendant of Genghis Khan, and each pursued its own interests. The conquest of the West. The Mongols continued their conquests. In 1237, the Golden Horde, led by Batu, a grandson of Genghis Khan, invaded Russia. They captured and burned the city of Kiev in 1240, and they advanced into Poland and Hungary. The Mongol invasion of Europe was one of the most terrifying events in European history. The Mongols were swift, ruthless, and seemingly unstoppable. They defeated the combined armies of Poland and Germany at the Battle of Legnica in 1241, and they advanced to the borders of the Holy Roman Empire. But then, in 1241, Ögödei died. The Mongol leaders, needing to be present for the election of a new great Khan, withdrew from Europe. They never returned. The Ilkhanate and the fall of Baghdad. In the Middle East, the Mongols, under the leadership of Hulagu, a grandson of Genghis Khan, continued their conquests. In 1258, they captured and sacked Baghdad, the capital of the Abbasid Caliphate. The destruction of Baghdad was a devastating blow to the Islamic world. The city was burned, its libraries were destroyed, and its population was slaughtered. The Mongol Empire reached its greatest extent under Hulagu. It stretched from the Mediterranean Sea to the Indus River, from the Caucasus Mountains to the Arabian Desert. The Yuan Dynasty. In China, the Mongol Empire was transformed into a Chinese-style dynasty. Kublai Khan, a grandson of Genghis Khan, established the Yuan Dynasty in 1271. He moved the capital from Karakoram to what is now Beijing. He adopted Chinese customs and practices, and he governed China as a Chinese emperor. Kublai Khan completed the conquest of China in 1279, when he defeated the Song dynasty. He was the first foreigner to rule all of China. Kublai Khan was a great statesman, but his reign was also marked by failures. He launched two disastrous invasions of Japan, which were defeated by typhoons, storms that the Japanese called kamikaze, or divine wind. He also invaded Southeast Asia, but his campaigns were largely unsuccessful. Despite these failures, the Yuan Dynasty was a period of cultural and economic flourishing. The Mongols encouraged trade and commerce, and they promoted the exchange of ideas between East and West. The Silk Road, which had been disrupted for centuries, was revived. Chinese inventions, paper, printing, the compass, and gunpowder, spread to the West. Persian and Arab astronomy, medicine, and mathematics were introduced to China. The Pax Mongolica. Under Mongol rule, Eurasia experienced a period of unprecedented peace and stability, the Pax Mongolica, or Mongol peace. Trade flourished, ideas flowed, and cultures mingled. The Mongols established a network of trade routes that connected the Mediterranean with the Pacific. The most famous traveler of this period was Marco Polo, a Venetian merchant who traveled to China and served Kublai Khan for nearly 20 years. His book, The Travels of Marco Polo, brought the wonders of the East to the West and inspired generations of explorers. But the Pax Mongolica was also a period of exploitation. The Mongols ruled by force, and they extracted heavy taxes from their subjects. They were tolerant of different religions, but they were also ruthless in suppressing dissent. The decline. The Mongol Empire began to decline in the 14th century. The causes were many: internal divisions, economic decline, and the outbreak of the Black Death, which devastated the population of Eurasia. The Yuan Dynasty fell in 1368, when the Chinese rebel leader Zhu Yuanzhang overthrew the Mongols and established the Ming Dynasty. The Ilkhanate collapsed in the 1330s. The Golden Horde declined in the mid-14th century, and it eventually fragmented into several smaller territories in the 15th century. The Mongol Empire was gone, but its legacy endured. It had transformed the map of Eurasia, opened intercontinental trade, and changed the course of world history. The legacy. The Mongols have often been portrayed as barbarians, a detestable nation of Satan, as one 13th century chronicler put it. But the reality is more complex. The Mongols were brutal conquerors, but they were also patrons of art, science, and culture. They promoted religious tolerance, encouraged trade, and facilitated the exchange of ideas. The Mongols also created the largest contiguous empire in history. At its height, it stretched from the Sea of Japan to the Carpathian Mountains, covering approximately 24 million square kilometers. No empire before or since has matched its size. The Mongol Empire also had a profound impact on the nations it conquered. Russia, China, Persia, and the Islamic world were all transformed by Mongol rule. The Mongols introduced new technologies, new ideas, and new ways of governing. The lessons. What can we learn from the story of the Mongol Empire? First, unity is strength. The Mongols were divided into warring tribes until Genghis Khan united them. Once united, they became the most powerful force in the world. Division is a weakness, unity is a strength. Second, adaptability is essential. The Mongols were nomadic horsemen, but they adapted to the challenges of conquest. They learned siege warfare from the Chinese, they adopted the administrative systems of their subjects, and they welcomed foreign advisors. They were not rigid, they were flexible. Third, tolerance can be a strength. The Mongols were tolerant of different religions and cultures. They did not impose their own beliefs on their subjects. This tolerance allowed them to rule a vast, diverse empire. Fourth, power is fleeting. The Mongol Empire was the largest in history, but it lasted less than 2 centuries. It rose quickly, and it fell quickly. No empire is eternal. And finally, the past is never really past. The Mongol Empire is gone, but its legacy lives on. The Silk Road, which the Mongols revived, connected East and West and shaped the course of world history. The Mongol Empire also had a profound impact on the nations it conquered: Russia, China, Persia, and the Islamic world. The dream. Now, as you drift off to sleep, think about the Mongols. Imagine the endless grasslands of Mongolia, the vast sky, the thundering hooves of the horses. Imagine the boy Temüjin, clutching a blood clot in his fist, destined for greatness. Imagine the battles, the conquests, the empire that stretched from the Pacific to the Mediterranean. Imagine the Pax Mongolica, the peace that allowed travelers to cross Eurasia without fear. Imagine Marco Polo in the court of Kublai Khan, marveling at the wonders of the East. Imagine the Silk Road, bustling with merchants, carrying silks, spices, and ideas. And imagine the decline, the civil wars, the plagues, the rebellions. Imagine the empire crumbling, the great Khans fading into history. The Mongols are gone, but they are not forgotten. They live on in the stories we tell, in the history we study, in the world they help to shape. They are a reminder that even the most unlikely people can change the world, that a boy from the steppes, born into obscurity, can become the ruler of the largest empire in history. So tonight, as you lie in your warm bed, in your safe home, surrounded by the people you love, think about the Mongols. Think about their courage, their ambition, their ruthlessness. Think about their achievements, their failures, their legacy. And remember that we are all part of the story they began, the story of human civilization. Sleep well. Sleep deeply. And may your dreams be filled with the sound of thundering hooves, the sight of endless grasslands, and the hope of a world that is always being built anew. Good night.